Good morning, Frank. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to having you at the 7th annual Step Up conference that's coming up on April 28th. So tell me a little bit about what your session is. It's about why people of color need our own spaces. I like that.
Yeah, so in short, I'll try to give you the short version, but thank you, Jerry, for having me on this podcast. But I would say the short version is I've been in spaces, leadership spaces since 2017 in the nonprofit world. And I quickly recognize, when I'm in some of these spaces, I don't want to say being dismissed, but certainly being questioned and finding the similarities with other leaders of color where I organically kind of developed my own circle of leaders of color that I could trust, I could vent with, that I could talk to. And and that really became the basis of I wanted to be proactive around these circles or spaces for leaders of color. I just felt, it took me several years to develop my own circle, uh, but wanting to do this more proactively and giving the reasons why. There's a very big difference between what can be said with Black and brown folks than and not having to worry about what a white person's discomfort, a white person's not understanding. There's just those levels that we need to ourselves. And I'll go more into it. Certainly that it's not an exclusionary methodology. It really is just a way for our groups to really convey and share and heal together as we're kind of going through navigating through these white dominant spaces.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of times where people of European descent don't understand that people of color, Black and brown individuals, indigenous individuals, we need our own spaces because when we are in a space where it's dominantly white, we got to code switch.
We
We've got to
do.
navigate differently. And the toll on our bodies is enormous. And I don't think they understand that. So tell me why it is so important for us to have our own spaces.
I think it's just for what you said. I don't want, again, not saying it's a lack of understanding, but certainly there's things that we go through, again, Black and brown and indigenous folks day after day that only ourselves know what it's like and what it feels like. And when I do this session, I'm absolutely will be sharing like a personal story, but certainly yes, the moments where you feel that these spaces matter, I would say are those moments when you're in a very large meeting and you're one of only a few people of color in there. And again, I don't think there's a lot of intent, but there's a lot of privilege in not feeling like your voice is being heard or being questioned in a certain way, that almost demeans or minimizes, I should say,
Right.
our thought processes. And we do think differently. And that, again, there's no other way to say it than because of the experiences that we've gone through and the experiences that we've shared. It's really critical that we get to talk about those things with one another.
Right, exactly. And it's sometimes I feel that with people of European descent, they feel like, well, it is a exclusion, they're being excluded from places where we are. And it's like, how do you get them to understand that, it's like we're in relationship with people of European descent. We work among you, alongside you, but
Mhm.
we do navigate spaces differently. We think differently,
Yep.
and so it's like one of the things that I look at, and Jeremy, he's my husband, he's a person of European descent. And I've got to tell him, I'm like, I am from Hawaii. I live here in Washington State. It's
Mhm.
cold. I'm not close to my medicine. I'm not close to my island.
Right.
I'm not close to my people. And when I feel like if I walk into a place and there's Hawaiian music going, and there's people that look like me, there is
Mhm,
something inside of me that feels alive. And it's not that
mhm.
we feel dead around people of European descent, it's
Right,
just
right.
differently, right?
Right. Well, we've navigated these spaces for hundreds of years in this country. And so it's in our systems, meaning white dominant systems.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's so many systems around. It's almost unkind for a person of, as you said, with European descent to want to be in a circle where this is really our should be only our space to ourselves to heal, to talk, to break bread, and it is very different. Like you said, when I come into spaces similarly, I'm Mexican. And so coming into spaces with Black and brown folks, because I live in Tucson, it's primarily Mexican, and I feel differently. And I mean, in a very good way, when I get to spend time with people who look like me, who've gone through experiences like me. And it really is a space to kind of process. And
Mhm.
especially as I said, if you're an upcoming leader of color, it's a very precarious, let me say, it's a very eye-opening experience when you come into these spaces and you may not be ready for it. So having a ready-made space to have these conversations, I wish I would have had that, 6 years ago when I first entered the nonprofit world.
Right, exactly. So what motivated you to present at the Step Up conference?
Well, I was a part of this last year, and one of the committee members had seen a session that I had done for a conference, and the session was around using asset-based language to reclaim BIPOC narratives. Again, I've been in spaces where, underrepresented youth or underprivileged youth, I should say, those that connotation or homeless people, all of those pieces are deficit framed. And so I presented to this group last year to kind of showcase how we write about somebody. There's our brain works in a really creative way. It starts making assumptions just to kind of process through information very, very quickly. And so that's how I got connected to this particular conference. Plus, I mean, I love it. You're moving racial equity forward. I mean, I live for that. So I was glad that this young man reached out to me to let me know about the opportunity, and it did. It went really well in regards to just presenting to this group. Um, and I don't know the makeup of the group, but I would assume it's probably at least 50%, of European descent. That would be the exact audience I want to give these messages to let them know, hey, this is how you can be an ally. And let me say one last thing as well, Jerry. You know, part of my process and part of the session that I'm going to be doing is also going to be talking about white allies and why they should have their own space too, because it can be a heavy burden for a Black or brown person uh, to always have to be that one person to educate a person of European descent. Um, so having a group of white allies can be really beneficial as well, because now you're going to have theoretically people on different journeys, and a white person who's new on their journey can talk to another white person who's much further along in their journey. And again, we come together at a certain point, but the learning process doesn't have to be so weighted on the person of color, because it can be pretty heavy. Like I've had this happen to me several times, and it can be heavy. And so that's another piece to kind of share in regards to, it's not just about people of color having their own spaces. We should also have our white allies having their own spaces so that they can move along their journey at a faster rate than doing it alone.
That's great. So your target audience is broad. It could be people of color
Yes.
as well as people of European descent.
My sense, Jerry, is that people of color, we already know this. We already know we need our own spaces. It's really to educate our white friends, and just let them know this is why we need our spaces. It's not about you. It's 100% about us. And you should have your own spaces too, because obviously you're at this conference that wants to move racial equity forward. You want to have a resource to kind of navigate and understand. This is really about a level of understanding for our white friends, and also tell them, look, create your own circles, create your own spaces uh, of white allyship to really help one another kind of move along this spectrum.
Right. And I like that you said that, it's like we have our own spaces, BIPOC has our own spaces so then that we can heal because we heal differently. People of
Yes,
European descent have their own spaces. So that way, when we come together, we can be better
yes,
together. Right. And
absolutely,
that's it.
absolutely.
That's it.
Let's do our healing on our own, because even if you think on the European side or European descent side, they're going to feel, I would assume, and I'm pretty sure research shows, they can be more open and they don't have to be thinking that they have to kind of monitor what they're saying. So when you're with a group
Right.
of white allies, then there's none of that monitoring, and then there can be that self within that group to help one another. Like, oh, you probably shouldn't say it that way. Versus if they were in my group, and it happens, and this where you just like, oh my god, and then it just completely shifts your thought process, even if it's in a temporary moment, but it can really hijack the conversation. So again, that's another reason to kind of let's heal on our own, and we can come together, and there's going to be moments where we do get to integrate and kind of intersect, but let's do our healing on our own, because we need it.
Exactly. Exactly. So what is the single most important message you want to convey to your audience to help move racial equity forward?
Oh, that's such a great question, Jerry. I would say probably the single most important thing is the inner work. I would say, you said it a second ago. We are all on different journeys, um, and it's very easy to make assumptions on where a person is on their journey. So I would say the single most important thing is the inner work. There's resources. We have sessions like these. We have conferences like these, really to help us move along that journey. Find allies, find friends, challenge yourself, build your circle, make it wider, introduce more people of different races, different lifestyles, different sexual orientations, expand that circle. You will learn so much more. So I think the first the first step is really beginning with the inner self. Work there, and then you can expand out. And I feel like people will understand, or people will see, I should say, the genuineness, the authenticity that you want to learn. Um, and if we feel that, mind you, and again, as a man of color, I can tell, those who really, really want to learn, you can just see it in their eyes. And so for every mistake that they make, meaning like some like a microaggression of some sort,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
I'm quicker to forgive, especially if I feel that authenticity.
Exactly, exactly. I always use Jiddu Krishnamurti's quote that the only hope for humankind is in the transformation of the individual,
Mm, I love that.
that each person has to do their work. And I think that's one of the things about moving racial equity forward is you're right, that we have to start with ourselves first.
Yeah,
So, well, I'm really excited
me
to
too.
have you, Frank. And so you are actually going to have is it a morning session that you're having?
I believe it is. I believe it's a morning session.
Perfect. Yeah. And people could go on to the Hoover page to find Step Up 2023 and
Yes,
register for your session. And we look forward to having you on April 28th.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, Jerry, for this opportunity to share about the session.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Frank. And we're looking forward to having you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well.